Thank you everyone for joining my show. I'm your host Emmanuel Mutui, and today I have an amazing guest. I've seen him a couple times playing. He's an amazing musician, one of the best saxophones I've heard play in person, and I never thought in my wildest imagination he'll be sitting next to me right here. And the fact that he's sitting next to me, I'm just so excited, and this is such a huge honor. He's a Billboard charting. Actually, in December, he had a song on the Billboard 100. So this is awesome. I'm so excited. This is gonna be good. But without further ado, Tony Exum Jr.
Yes.
How you doing?
Doing good, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah.
Honored to be here, man.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
So when I asked you, and we just talked about this a little bit to be on my show, you told me you had a couple shows out of town.
Yeah.
How did they go?
You know what? It's always fun, especially now. I think as we've edging away from the pandemic, hopefully.
Yeah.
The appreciation for music, I've seen a big difference in that. The appreciation for being able to go out and interact with people. So going on the road is a little different now as it was pre-pandemic, which is funny.
Yeah.
Because I think this week was the last normal week we had 2 years ago.
Yes.
We didn't even know it.
It's true.
I had no idea what was coming. So when you reflect back on that part, and you look at what was going on before, not to say that people didn't appreciate it, but there's a different type of emotional connection I think people are making to live music. And sometimes things do have to be removed from you before you appreciate it or can reflect back. Yeah. So I've had great shows just because people are just happy to be able to go out and hear good music. So I've experienced some really good things in these last few tour dates.
And before we continue, as a musician, how much did the pandemic affect you?
For me, it was hard. It goes without saying it was stressful. It was heartbreaking in some situations. There were times when we were really doubtful as to how our future was going to unfold. There were times when it was like, man, are we done? Is this over? That might seem a little bit extreme, but when you're looking at the music industry, when it comes to live music, you have a lot of things that are planned ahead, planned in the future, a lot of annual events. And to see those shut down and not know when it's going to come back, you have that sense of foreboding, like, well, what's going to happen? And maybe we won't get back to what we used to do. So, we had to kind of just hang in there. For me personally, though, it allowed me to actually reconnect with my hometown audience because I was able to take advantage of some opportunities here kind of forcefully. I've always kept myself a little bit separated from the hometown, and the reason why is because a lot of times when you're from a place, people get used to you and they don't always appreciate you. So you have to leave home, and then they're like, oh, wait, when are you coming back? And this happens to everybody. I think there's not one artist that can say, I was the man at home, but then, oh yeah, that's Tony. We know him. We see him at the grocery store. Then you start going other places. They're like, but wait, when are you going to come back and do what you just did? And I just saw a video of you in Atlanta. Are you going to play at home again? Because I want to experience that. I want to see you. I want to support you. So I took that time to reconnect with the local audience. I worked with Copper, the cultural officer of the Pikes Peak region, to do this thing called Curbside Culture, where they picked like about 7 or 8 different types of artists and kind of marketed personal or private, performances, of course, with social distancing. So I spent summer 2020 going to people's homes, literally to their cul-de-sacs, and playing for their neighborhood. People were setting up their backyards and putting on these little events and saying, well, we're going to have Tony Exum play 45 minutes. And I go to your backyard, set up my equipment, and some people had wine and cheese spreads and stuff and had the chairs placed 6 feet apart. And I'm putting on a mini concert for the neighborhood, which was great because I got a chance to it's a little more intimate. And that felt good because we weren't completely shut down. Some venues had partial, limited attendance, requirements or whatever. So I was still able to do some gigs without having to be I just couldn't tour.
True.
And that was the hard part. So I just kind of took advantage of what I had, did the best with what was placed in front of me.
It was through that I got to see you playing a Kawaii for the first time. Remember when they had the Kawaii just opened up?
Yes.
They had little curtains to block the stage from the
I remember
audience.
that was the strangest thing. They had the shower curtain. You had to be there.
Yeah, it was so hot, like
Yeah,
behind the curtain.
But
It's
we had a whole other motivation at that point. So there was some stuff that was going on musically that was on a different level because we had that little tiny blockage.
Yeah.
So we knew we had to captivate everybody orally because they couldn't see us exactly.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So I think everybody had a little bit more of a like, okay, well, we're gonna make this pop, and so that was interesting to do.
Yeah,
that, you know.
and then you and Nico just going back and forth. I'm like,
Yeah,
wow.
That's my little nephew, man. He's
And then
young gentleman.
Epiphany. That's why I saw you again. I think I might have seen you one more place. I can't remember where. It's been all the Anthem Enterprises shows, and that stuff seems like a beautiful relationship that's formed.
Yeah, definitely. I really like what Terry and Josiah is doing with Q and you know, his brother and the whole crew. You know, there's been a lot of great music that's come out of that.
Yes,
Stuff that you guys haven't heard yet. You know, we've done some recording at the music retreat, and there's been some phenomenal. It's coming soon. You know, creativity that's come out of that environment. So
I guess we missed each other at the retreat because I was there the last day.
you know what? I think the last time, well, both times I was there was on a Saturday.
Okay.
And so. Yeah, I probably did miss you that last time, but that was even for me, you know, and I'm considerably older than everybody, so I'm kind of like, they call me the OG.
You are the OG.
Big bro. So you know, and that's cool. I'm honored, you know. But I remember saying that when I was there, I was like, you know, I haven't had this much fun with musicians that are older than me or my age in a long time. I said, you know, I told him, I was like, this is amazing, and there's so much potential. And just really raw. Some of it's raw, some of it's very seasoned already, you know. Khalil Brown, the drummer,
Oh my
watched him
goodness.
since he was a little boy, literally.
He's so good.
And I'm looking at him like, dude, I told you this when you were 13.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, look at you now. You're
He's
incredible.
so good.
You know, Nico wasn't at that one, but, you know, of course, Nico's a fine example of great musicianship at a young age, very mature,
Yeah.
and definitely going to be on his way. And I'm really excited to see where his journey's going to end up.
Yeah. Do you see yourself more as a mentor now?
I have stepped into that role, yes, and I have no qualms with that. I think I owe it to myself because I never really had that musician to take me under their wing. I had resources to pull from, draw from, but I never had that one guy that said, "Hey, you know, let me help you out, or let me show you some things, or I just want to support you." I had to kind of figure it out on my own, and use the resources that I felt were necessary to make that happen. So I was very, very into the music business.
Yeah.
And so kind of, you know, obsessed with the idea of how it worked. So from a young age, I just would daydream about what, you know, be laying in my bed and reading a magazine and be like, well, you know, what is Prince doing right now? What is Michael doing? You know,
Right.
Are they in the studio? Are they at home? Are they, you know, traveling? Or is he doing a video? You're just wondering, like, what are they doing while I'm sitting here, you know, daydreaming? And I had this kind of self-actualization method. And I just kind of saw myself doing what I'm doing right now. That was my way of keeping myself going, you know, even at times when I wasn't a full-time artist.
Yeah.
So that taught me more. And, you know, there's a lot of information out there, especially, you know, since we're in the information age, 20 some odd years into that. So things are at your fingertips. Whereas when I was younger, it was books, you know, memoirs and interviews and documentaries. And, you know, of course, you know, magazines were the big thing. So when you get Vibe magazine or Source magazine or Downbeat or, you know, XXL or, you know, even the other little teeny bopper magazines that were out there back then, you know, Fresh magazine, Right On magazine, you know, that was our resource.
Yeah.
Of all sources of information to our favorite artists.
Yeah.
You know, and we had MTV or BET when they actually played videos back then. You know, I come from that era, so you had that to look at, and for contemporary jazz, you know, you just had all, you know, those records, that music. That was how you know, those guys weren't really given a lot of mainstream platforms to outside of maybe Kenny G to really do their thing. So you had to listen. And if you caught an interview on Video Soul, it was like, oh, wow, that's Najee right there. You know, there's Jared Albright, you know, but that was few and far between in those days.
Yeah.
Now those same two gentlemen are friends of mine.
Wow.
So kind of come full circle. So I had to,
Yeah.
you know, I got their mentorship after becoming a professional, but, you know, rightfully so, as I looked up to them, you know, my whole career. So I have learned to step into that role, and accept it, and do my best. You know, sometimes I look at and I'm like, what can I possibly do to help them? They're just everybody's blazing, you know. But then I think I have years of experience and some knowledge and some wisdom to impart. So hopefully I can do that. And I'm still a student of the game. I don't know it all, you know. I don't have all the answers yet, but
So
I can reflect and look back and say, okay, I can see where I can help those guys.
So let's take it back
Sure.
to where you began. Obviously, you said you're Colorado native, Colorado Springs native. This is a small market with not a lot of black people.
Right.
So how in the world did you get into that?
It's crazy. If you want to go way back,
Okay.
I had an uncle who played saxophone. I was telling him earlier, saw him as a little boy. He ended up going to the Army and became an Army musician. And Army musicians are kind of the closest thing in the military to real musicians. And I hate not just the Air Force or nothing like that, but Air Force, they do a lot more of the corporate side of it. Whereas the Army cats, from what my observation, they were the guys that their performances were a little closer to, at least back then, maybe not so now, what you would hear at, on your regular bands, regular, music situations. So I watched him do that. He was incredible, incredible musician. And there was one time he was playing at Amherst Park, I think it was 4th of July weekend, sometime like maybe 86, 87. And my uncle was up there killing it, and the crowd was going crazy, and it was just like, wow, that's Uncle Larry.
Yeah.
I'm going to be like him.
Yeah.
I'm going to do just that. So after that gig, I said, Uncle Larry, I want to play saxophone because I want to learn how to do what you do. He was like, really? He got a big old smile on his face. Okay, we'll set you up. Gave me his first horn. It's like this old sax, had to get a bunch of repairs. So I started the whole band thing,
Yeah.
And I was living in Biloxi, Mississippi at that time because my stepfather was a retired Air Force. So I was coming to Colorado to visit family, to spend my summer so I could see my father, see my mother's side of the family. Our family was very deeply rooted in Colorado Springs. So that's where I experienced a lot of that stuff. So as a kid moving back here, my foresight was always beyond Colorado. I knew it was small. I knew what the industry wasn't really here. There's a lot of talent.
Yeah.
It's always been that Colorado Springs has always had that potential, and for some reason we just haven't gotten over that hurdle yet. I think we're closer than we've ever been before now, but it was even worse back when I was 15, 16, and 17.
Really?
So I knew I was going to have to either leave or I was going to have to make home work. So what I did was I was kind of on the edge of my seat all the time. I got out of college. I went to University of Denver. I studied music there. And immediately after high school, I started getting some professional experience, which I didn't think was going to happen. I thought I was going to go to school, get out. That's where my lack of guidance came from. I'm like, okay, I got to graduate from college first, and then I'll get some gigs. And then I'm 18 years old. I'm in a studio recording music with some guys that were here doing some things. I was doing shows with them. I was, and all of a sudden I'm in this scene.
Yeah.
Because they saw me and they knew who my uncle was and thought, oh man, that's Francis's nephew and he's playing like that. Well, we gotta, So they kind of were on the outskirts of their own careers, but they did their best to try to give me a little push.
So before we continue forward, I want to talk to you about your family dynamics a little bit.
Sure.
How did that impact you as a man? Like your family, some is Mississippi, some is here, and all this.
As a person, as a man, it's given me a lot of grounding. Having grown up as a military kid, when you're away from family, you forge relationships with people, your schoolmates, and friends, and that becomes like family. And then because of the military dynamic, at some point you have to leave. You've had so many friends come and go, so you get like this kind of this kind of tribal view, because one minute your best friend's here, and then his dad gets orders to Japan and he's gone, and you might not see him again. So before we had social media and all that good stuff, and at first you write letters, and then that kind of tapers off, and you make new friends, and so it gave me a sense of wanderlust. It gave me a sense of independence. But coming back here, kind of grounded that a little bit because I was surrounded by both sides of the family. I have my mother's side and my father's side there. They all know each other. My grandmothers were friends first, so my older cousins knew my uncles and my dad way before I was even thought about. So there's a sense of family that I'm kind of in the middle of two really big families. That can be a blessing and a curse because it can keep you grounded, give you a sense of favor, but it can also stifle you because you're very comfortable in that environment. And so I've always kind of envied people that were able to leave home and stay away. You know, I've stayed here, but now, even at my age now, I'm like, okay, for personal reasons, I think I need to just go see what it's like to live in another city. But on a positive note, the love and support and that feeling of family has always kept me grounded. I have to say that's been a motivating factor for sure.
How was your adjustment from moving all the time, meeting people, making new friends, to all of a sudden everybody's here together at all times?
You know, when we first got back here, it was exciting. We were like, oh, back in Colorado Springs, we're back home, blah, blah, blah. My mother's from New Orleans, and that's kind of our home too, culturally speaking, because, you know, she moved up here as a little girl. But our big family connection is in New Orleans on that side of the family. So we were in Biloxi, Mississippi, and that's like the distance between here and Denver. So there was a connection there, but this is home, you know, as they say. First we were excited, then we got homesick from living in the South because we were there for so long.
Yeah.
Then we started missing being back there. I remember there were times I was like, man, I miss the radio stations we used to have. I miss the food. I miss, you know, you can almost go, well, not necessarily me because I live in military housing, but you could be in certain parts of the South and all you see is people that look like you for days on end. I got used to that. I got used to, you know, coming back here, it's like we're kind of spread out. And when I was younger, I thought Colorado Springs had a bigger black population, but I'm having to remember that I'm surrounded by family. I got these two big families. Then I realized I was like, we're really not as much of us out here as I thought. We here, but not like Biloxi or New Orleans, of course.
Yeah.
So I kind of started missing that cultural thing, you know, and so it almost felt, because my time here was always the summertime. So when we finally got here and I realized I wasn't going anywhere for the summer, I'm here. It was a little strange. You know, and I'm speaking from my immediate family, my sister, my mother, my stepfather. We all kind of had our, you know, we had such a strong grounding in Biloxi that we were thinking like, hey, did we make a mistake coming back this way? Should we have stayed gone? Because, man, that's crazy. We kind of forgot what, my mother in particular, because growing up here, she kind of forgot what Colorado really was. And so coming back here, we all felt homesick. It was the weirdest feeling. So, but after a while, you know, you just, you reflect on that, but you know, a couple of years later, you know, I think probably my junior year in high school, started to feel like, okay, this is cool. This is where I'm from, and you know, you just kind of make it work. And I got to connect with the big family and more cousins that I didn't know I had, and you know, that kind of thing. So
That's funny.
yeah,
That's awesome. So anyway, so let's get back to your journey. So you finished college. You're recording with some like amazing artists. What was the next step after there?
After that, I came to a crossroads my senior year. I started to realize that studying music was great. I went to the University of Denver, which was an incredible school. They once referred to DU as the Harvard of the West at one point in time. Don't know if they call it that now, but that's definitely the distinction they had back then. So I was enjoying that, but I started to feel like I better have something else to fall back on, because, you know, the road to music, you know, back then, I got a little scared. I thought, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. My experiences at DU were up and down. You know, I was one of few black students at Lamont School of Music at the time. So I was a little disconnected from the others that were at the main campus, because where we were was almost on another side of town. And I dealt with some things there, being one of those few black students at Lamont. And I didn't talk about this a whole lot, but there was a lot that went on to kind of hold me back. And I got really discouraged and decided, you know, I don't know if I want to go back. And I'm right at the point where you're at the senior year, like, just write it out. But I was so my discord and discomfort was just too much to bear. So I thought about it really hard. I thought, well, what if I do this? What if I get myself out, get into the workforce, develop some other skill sets, still pursue music? Because I can be a musician and not have a degree in music. So I love the education I had. I'm going to eventually go back and finish what I started, because that's just the kind of person I am. But I decided to move forward, and I went knee deep into professional music world. but I wasn't ready to do full. I was scared to go full time with music, and I didn't have a lot of encouragement because I wasn't around. Like I said, I didn't have that mentor to say, "No, man, you can do this. Let me show you." So I was kind of hit or miss, trial and error, playing with bands A, B, and C, just trying to figure it out, but maintaining, a day job, and then.
So these day jobs are just random jobs you would do?
No, not necessarily. I mean, I had kind of a focus. I did insurance. I really liked insurance. I had a best friend of mine who was still my best friend to this day, and he was working in insurance, and he said, I can get you a job in customer service over here at this company, and it's probably one of the best or higher paying entry level jobs around here. So I thought, well, if I'm gonna have a day job, I better have something that can, so I got into that world. And typically, in the 90s, living in Colorado Springs, there's a ton of call centers, so I kind of did that. I think it's still kind of like that to this day. But that was like the culture around this town, man. Like, if you didn't have a job, okay, go work at Future Call for 6 weeks while you're waiting on the next one so you can get a paycheck real quick. That was like everybody's hustle. Work at MCI. Yeah, people would literally do that, like, because, the attrition in those places was huge.
Yeah.
So people are in and out every week. So it's like, okay, I quit over here or got let go over here or moving on. So, but to keep some money rolling, I'm going to go, pretend to be a telemarketer for 2 weeks, hustle that paycheck. And then my new job starts, on the 1st. Everybody, that was just the culture around it.
Yeah.
I worked in different factions of that. I think I might have worked for Future Call in between my freshman and sophomore year in college, but I worked for USAA, worked for California Casualty, I worked for Allstate.
Wow.
I was an licensed insurance producer in Colorado for a few years. So I have that background. I hadn't got my life and health and was about to venture off into that, and then, things changed. And so.
So what was your big break?
My big break, wow, I kind of created it.
Okay.
What's
the story?
I think my big break was for me, was my decision to move forward with my music career. That was my big break because things started to happen.
Okay.
I finally took that leap of faith. So my big break and my leap of faith are kind of intertwined. At that point, I was working for I'm not going to mention the name of it, so I hated that place, so I'll be nice. A collection spot, I'll just say that. I was doing that kind of high-end collection stuff, not fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I hated that job, but I had to do it. I was a father too, had a daughter to take care of,
Mm-hmm.
So, I got laid off, and I said, I'm done with this. Let me just go for it. Let me just try it. I had a manager. I just got one. First CD was out. Hadn't even been out 6 months yet. So things were already kind of moving in that. There's no trajectory there. But when I took that leap of faith, the next thing I know, I'm flying to D.C. to perform. First time I went out as a national recording artist.
Wow.
With my name on the ticket. I've traveled before, but that was like a wedding here, a couple gigs here with this band or that band, but never Tony Exum Jr.
Uh-huh.
So I did this gig in Columbia, Maryland, because of my first manager, because he was in D.C. area. And when I did that gig and I had the sold-out crowd and sold my own CDs and I'm signing them and people came to come see me play, then I had like a whole group of people that were from here that knew my family from back in the day. So they brought all their friends. I thought, oh man, I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
And it just spiraled. So 2011 was my breakout year.
Yeah. So before you continue, you had a manager. So that means you're serious about, because this is 6 months before.
Yes.
So what was that like a signal of intent? Like, I'm going to get a manager because I'm serious about this.
Yeah, I was looking for it, and it kind of fell in my lap. It's kind of funny how it happened. There was a young lady that I met that I'm still friends with to this day. Her name is Cheryl Boone. Hi, Cheryl. I'm going to send this to her. But we kind of became friends through Facebook. And this is when Facebook was starting to take over as the main social media outlet, MySpace was the thing, or Moco Space was before that. So this is back. I'm aging myself, I'm taking y'all back to the MySpace days. So Facebook is starting to kick in. And she just saw that I play saxophone, and she loves the saxophone, so we became friends. And so as social media started to grow and everyone started to have pages, and we were able to outreach and find all these different resources. All the radio stations had pages, all the production companies, studios. Social media is really starting to take a hold of the music industry, and she linked me up with this show called Talking Smooth Jazz. And I used to listen to it before. Well, the co-host for Talking Smooth Jazz, after I did my first interview on there, it was June 12th, I think, 2010.
Okay.
That was huge for me because there were two other jazz legends that were on that same show. So I got a nice little, nice little kickoff there.
Yeah.
It's about a month and a half after I'd released my first CD. So I'm just kind of working my way out there and trying to figure out what I'm going to do. So I'm asking some people, sending some emails, just kind of on that indie artist grind. I used to stay up till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, sending email after email, just reaching out to people. Hey, I'm looking for management. I got turned down a lot. He calls me up one day. He says, "Hey, you got a manager?" And I said, "No, I don't." And he said, "Well, I'm interested in managing you. I like your music. I believe in what you're doing. He had a favorite song on my first CD." I thought, wow. And that was from being, doing that show. And so we kind of had like a handshake deal kind of thing. I said, "Well, let's go for it." He said, "Look, I'm not worried about how much money you may have or not. I just want to help you out. I really think that you can do something." And I said, "Okay." And we talked for about a month. And next thing you know, those phone calls, "Okay, you got an interview on this show." So next thing I know, I'm on like 5 or 6 different blog talk radio.
Wow.
That particular format was big back then.
Yeah.
And so I'm doing interviews on all these shows, a Smooth Jazz Ride, Conversations in Jazz, all these different, shows that were based in bigger cities, And so name starts spreading a little bit. He books my first national date in Colombia. And then after that, 2011, I'm touring now. Like, wow.
As a headliner.
As a headliner or on festivals with the guys that I used to grow up listening to. One minute I'm thinking I'll never meet these cats, the next thing I'm sitting in a green room right next to them. Oh, wow, there's Paul Taylor, there's Boney, there's Kim Waters. Wow. And they're like, "Hi, Tony." I'm thinking, wait, this is crazy. How they even know who I am?
So who got you starstruck?
First time I met David Sanborn, I was starstruck. The first time I met him, because that's like legend. That was at the Pikes Peak Center. He did a little meet and greet after the show. Then we met again 2 years later at the Winter Park Jazz Fest, which I was in a band called Soul School. We opened up the festival that day. He headlined. So I got a chance to talk to him after the show. So other time when I first met Gerald Albright, I was starstruck. I was only 19.
Wow.
And when I met him, I was completely like, wow.
Yeah.
Now we're friends. Like, I call him G, he calls me T Money. He's a buddy of mine. So, but when I first met him, I might even still have the little autograph he had signed for me way back then somewhere. But it was at the Hotel Elegante. Used to be the Sheraton a long time ago.
The one down south, right?
Yeah. This was in the 90s. It was the Sheraton back then. There was a concert that some guys put on with him as a headliner, and a couple other acts from Denver were there. So I just happened to see him walking out after he got done sound checking, and I was there early in anticipation. And when I saw him walk out, he had his horn on his shoulder. So I just kind of shyly, but determined to meet him. So I walked up. I said, "Hello, Mr. Albright." He turned around. Gerald has that, just that smile, and he said, "Hey, man," And I was like, "Oh, I'm Tony, and I play saxophone, and I listen to you." I'm like, I can't even look at the man. I'm looking this way, and he's just grinning. He's like, "Oh, cool." He says, "Well, you coming to the show tonight?" I said, "Yeah, I have tickets. I'm going to come to the show." He said, "Well, great. Well, come talk to me after the show." "Well, could you sign this for me?" "Sure." So he signs this little business card that I had, and he said, "Man, good luck, but come talk to me later." So after the show, they did another meet and greet. So I went up and, we had another conversation, and I thought, man, I just met Gerald Albright. You can't tell me nothing now. I'm going to make it, This was 94,
Yeah.
And so, but to bring it all home, like, years later, we become almost like peers. And so now when I see Gerald, it's we dap it up or give each other a hug and how you did. But, you couldn't have told me at 19 that we'd be that cool.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Same thing with like Najee. I just posted a video on my Facebook page of me and him jamming back and forth at the Soul Dove in Denver. That was really my hero back then.
Wow.
So when I met him, because the business is kind of small, the music industry is kind of, it's a little microcosm. It seems big,
Yeah.
but once you get into it, it starts to get smaller and smaller.
Especially with jazz.
Yeah, especially with jazz and
Jazz saxophonists.
and with social media, it's kind of leveled the playing field. So therefore, there's not that big of a distance between that up and coming horn player and that jazz legend.
Yeah.
When it comes to getting your name out there, so he knew who I was.
Yeah.
When I walked up to him at the Soil Dove, he's like, "Oh yeah, I've been wanting to meet you." And
Yeah.
I didn't realize that a mutual friend had already kind of introduced my music to him. So
I have a question. This is probably some of my ignorance. When you say you dropped your album back to 2011 when you kind of blew up,
yeah.
is it just what does that mean? Because I'm thinking album like a rap album or normal albums like
gotcha.
songs and whatnot.
Yeah,
you're
just
rapping.
your average album is 8 songs. So I just put out the very first full-length CD. I had released some singles before that.
And it's just you on a saxophone, nothing
Yeah,
else.
just me as the lead voice. I had a great producer who ironically now plays and produces with Gerald Albright. His name is James Roberson, and he and I were bandmates back then. We're bandmates at church now. We both are playing Heritage Christian Center in Aurora.
Okay.
But he's now part of Gerald's camp as a songwriter and a drummer. So it's kind of funny to see, him play for Gerald. After all these years. So he produced the first album.
Okay.
And I had some good musicians on there. He's one of those multi-instrumentalists, so he plays a lot of stuff. Plays drums, keys. I think he's touring on bass now. So back then he had a really strong songwriting. Even back then, he was really good at songwriting. I was his first, kind of major release outside of church.
Wow.
So, I took that thing and I worked it as long as I could. I released my second album a couple years later, but that's kind of what it is. I had like 9 songs on there.
Okay.
If I remember correctly.
So when you lead up to your second album, did you feel more pressure? How was?
Yes, because they call it the sophomore jinx.
Yeah.
Even indie artists can go through that. There was a lot of buzz on me with the first album. Kind of new kid on the block, breaking out with social media and then touring like crazy that year, just trying to get my name out there. So there was a lot of. So that second album had to do better. In some ways it did. Some ways it was a little bit of a disappointment, but it kept me consistent. It kept me out there. And when you're an independent artist, you can kind of release music when you want to. They kind of recommend you do it in a certain fashion in this particular genre. But for me, I became more of a singles guy after that. But the second album definitely proved the point that I belonged. That's one thing it did do.
In what way?
Well, the growth. There was more songs on that CD, but I had some special guest artists on the record that made it really work. That were big names in the business. So that kind of showed, okay, he's moving forward. And so definitely allowed me to kind of keep my footprint into the business. And so, that record really did, pretty good. And, some people are still hearing it. Like I said, when you're an indie artist and you don't have a big label behind you with that big push, and because the music business is so different now, because we're not the record buying consumers anymore. Sometimes you can have a record that people are hearing for the first time, and to you it's like old hat. But they just got introduced to you through someone else's songs or their own, exploration of who you are. Maybe they hear you on Spotify and like, okay, I like this guy. They go to your page. Oh, I didn't know he had those many records out. They just heard that new song. Yeah. So they go back and look at your, previous catalog and, purchase that or, support that as well. So there's still people that, are getting those 2 records for the first time. So, it kind of doesn't go away, which is cool.
How many albums do you have?
I have 3 albums out, working on the 4th.
Okay.
Got a new single coming very soon. Just run with the song you mentioned in the top 100 for about 10 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah. I was Billboard's most added song to radio.
Seriously?
I was the 3rd most added, I think 2 weeks in a row, which was really cool because I was right there under a couple of guys, that I look up to. So that was great. And then I ended up staying after that for a little while.
When did you get your first Billboard charting single?
First Billboard charting single was actually the year prior. There's several charts in smooth jazz. All of them are kind of similar. Billboard, of course, is because it's Billboard and that name is it's kind of the main one. So I was the first time I ever charted just in general on Billboard was in 2020. My friend Davis P. Stevens, he's a smooth jazz guitarist. Excuse me, very, very talented producer, songwriter from Philly, now lives in Los Angeles. He said, man, I got this song for you and I. Let's do it. And we wanted to release something that was uplifting, you know, because we were all just stressed out in 2020. So we wanted to release a song that we thought was going to make people feel good. And so we called the song Brighter Days. And that song did really well. So we were the most added, number one most added on Billboard for 3 weeks. And that was the first time I really hit that chart. And then we ended up being just on regular rotation on a lot of the big stations for about 10 months after that. Excuse me. So right after that, about almost a year later, I released Get At You, the latest single. And, you know, it worked out.
Yeah. So, because you just said that you're more of like a singles guys these days. Why is that? Is there like a production cost is cheaper? Is there like another reason?
Oh yeah, it's definitely part of it's economical. Because when you release a full-length album, I was lucky enough on those first 2 records to get a lot of help, but I still wanted to kind of elevate. Excuse me, and it gets very expensive. I don't think people realize as an independent artist, you do a lot of the same things that you would do if you had a record deal. So, you know, I just didn't have the same amount of resources at first. So I thought, well, I can still put out music. I'll just kind of release singles and, you know, once or twice a year just to my fans to get new music. And in addition to that, I was playing on a lot of other records, you know, from my fellow artists as a guest artist. So that also kind of kept me out there, kept the brand going pretty strong because I played on, man, I think between 2014 and 2018, I want to say probably 20 different collaborations with fellow smooth jazz artists at different levels of their careers.
Wow.
But enough to keep the name out there.
Yeah.
You know? So I kind of use that as a vehicle to bring new music to the fold. So now I'm ready to release, of course, a whole new album. But you know, we're still kind of in a world where we have to be very strategic about that, and we're going to see what's going to happen. But you know, it's smooth jazz is very singles driven.
Okay.
Because it's a radio format to begin with. So
okay.
You know, there's some guys that just refuse to even release records, man. There's some guys
really.
They're like, no, I'm done putting out records. I'll just drop a single once a year.
Wow. Because obviously it takes a lot of time and effort.
Yeah, and the return is very much more long term than when you have a deal. You got a certain amount of time for it to be promoted, and there's a certain sales expectation within that, what they call an option.
Yeah.
As an indie artist, like I said, my first CD still gets downloads. My second one, and I'm way past that. You know, I'd still perform some of those songs on my live shows, but it's like I got so much more new stuff to offer. But you know, as the world, you know, continues to look to digital formats as the way to hear music, as the way to buy music, you know, to have it, it's a whole new world. It's not like we're getting in our cars and driving to independent records to get 5 or 6 CDs, you know. And other than that, you know, your only option is, okay, I just got done performing, here's my music. Yeah. Point of sale kind of a situation, so they'll buy it at the gig. But you know, it's the wave of the future. Streaming is I just saw a report last night from the RIAA about the percentages of revenue that have shot up again, I think another 23% from subscription-based music. So more and more people are Spotify, Pandora, Sirius XM. Yeah,
I'm Spotify all day.
Oh yeah, you know, and so that's just kind of where we are. So we have to learn to adjust. And economically, at some point, it'll work out. I think this is kind of a whole other conversation, but hopefully Spotify will, and these other streaming services will look at the compensation part a little different, because
it's
for you to listen to my song 100 times and I get $2.56. That's kind of, you know, something like that, you know. But yet, a unit is 1,500 streams. Now multiply that times what used to be a gold record.
Wow.
And then the revenue from that is, you know, the numbers just don't make sense anymore. So it's a different world. And then being a jazz artist, my core demographic is a little older, my age and up. There's not, I don't get a lot of 20-year-olds in my shows. I just don't.
Yeah.
I'm trying. We're all trying to get the younger audience, but
Yeah.
smooth jazz has become like, okay, I'm getting older now. I want to kick back and, I've got the crib and the wife and kids. And,
Yeah.
kind of vibe. Or I'm settled in my life, career. I want to go get on a cruise. It's a little. That's kind of the market.
Yeah.
So, or I'm growing up and I'm trying to impress somebody. So let's go see Tony Exum at Mutui. And the vibe is so grown folk and
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
I get that.
I'm kind of teasing, but so therefore that demographic, they still want CDs.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the point of sale at the show happens. We don't get a lot of sales as artists from our the downloads either. People still, because they still want to pull out the liner notes and who played on what and who's in the thank yous. I learned a lot from the business from doing that. I was the kid that did that. My friends used to hate me because they'd have CDs and I'd be the one like, okay, so who produced track 4? And so and so played bass on track 5. Because you start seeing a lot of the same names over and over again. So
Yeah.
anyway, it's a different world. It's definitely.
So,
a big change.
as we wrap up here, I have 2 more questions I want to ask.
Sure.
When you're going into an album, because I love music, and I'm always curious to know people's concepts in their albums. What is your thought process? Are you trying to tell a story from beginning to end? It's the same story with like different paths, or is it just like each record is an individual record?
I would say that it's an overall story because each record is going to sometimes have elements of where you are at that point in time, creatively, personally, and so it's like chapters to a book.
Okay.
You can look at it that way, and within those chapters, there might be different storylines. If you think about your sitcoms, there's the main story. And there's always usually a little tributary of another story going on simultaneously. So that's kind of how those things work out. I always looked at my journey as very personal. So each record is going to tell its own story, but it's all chapters to the overall book. And however many chapters that has, only God knows. But hopefully I can make enough to have a lasting impact, have a legacy.
Yeah.
As a result.
Okay, that's good. I like that. And what upcoming shows do you have?
So let's see. I'm hitting the road again next week, going to Las Vegas for a 1-year anniversary of a radio station called Worldwide Jazz Network. It's a big, anniversary party. Looking forward to that. About 5 or 6 of my fellow smooth jazz artists are going to be there. Actually, more than that. After that, I will be at the Gold Room the following week here in town. Thursday, the 24th. That's a free show, 7 p.m. So come one, come all, please. After that, I head up to, I think I have a show in Denver, April 1st. And then I'm back on the road again at the Berks Jazz Fest, which is a big jazz fest in Reading, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Very excited to be part of that. This will be my second time returning to that festival, and I'm really excited about that.
Yeah.
I'm working on a tour with David P. Stevens, the gentleman I mentioned earlier. We are we booked so far in Philly and I think Houston, and we're accepting dates right now. So there's a lot of stuff in the works. Some things are confirmed, some things aren't, but that's what's coming up so far.
So my final question, I did say I have 2 questions, but my final question, because you're kind of in an interesting place in your career. You're no longer the young kid anymore.
Right.
And so you're in this OG role, and the industry and the world has changed so much.
Right.
What do you see yourself, if you look yourself in the next 5-10 years?
Wow.
What do you see in
the
your
next
future?
in the next 5 or 10 years, I would hope to add as many chapters to that book I mentioned. I would hope to be Grammy nominated or Grammy winner. That's one of my main goals, to get that Grammy.
Yeah.
But overall, I see myself as having established not only just my individual sound as a saxophone player, but my sound as a songwriter and producer. that's the next phase for me, is to find that overall musical composition sound. I haven't quite found that yet. So, and then to bestow that to some up and coming artists. I also hope to be a force in terms of entertainment entrepreneurship. So, you know, my own festival here in Colorado, or my own concert series, you know, understanding, and to also venture off into some things I got in the works now. Like I do radio. I have a movie role coming up, minor role in the film, I should say. So hopefully to capitalize on all those different, you know, tributaries that I've created from the source of it all, is just being a saxophone player. So in 5 years, I hope I can look back and say, okay, I've completed these tours, I've released way more music, now I'm writing for some other artists, producing myself. In 10 years, maybe people will look at me like they look at Gerald, or Kirk Whalum, or Paul Taylor, or David Sanborn. But maybe I'll finally be that guy that the young saxophone player says, oh, I want to sound like Tony. I want to be like Tony. And I can hopefully meet that kid and give him some, guidance and, help usher in that generation behind me, and keep this music perpetually moving. Yes.
So I did say my last question, but you said something I just have to ask.
Okay.
You said you want to develop your sound. You've been doing this for 10, 15 years. And you've still not found your sound.
No, I haven't, man. I have my sound as a saxophone player is finally established. There's a stylistic aesthetic that I have as Tony Exum Jr. So in other words, if you're familiar with my music, I can play something and, oh, that sounds like Tony, or that is Tony. You can recognize me. But I haven't figured it out as far as my sound in terms of, because I've worked with a lot of other producers, and I've written a lot of songs, and I've contributed other musical elements to those songs, but I have yet to actually release a song that was produced, in its entirety by me, or an album. So that's what I mean by that. What's my sound as a if we took the saxophone out, with Kenny G, for example, his music as soon as you hear it. He can play 3 notes, that's Kenny. Kirk Whalum, that sound that they have. Jeff Lorber, some of these artists that I grew up listening to. Najee's a really good example. So that's what I'm looking for, so that I can bestow that onto other artists. I want to find out, and it's kind of a curiosity, because I may not ever be that producer, but it's in me, and I have yet to really focus on it. So these next 5 years are going to be the journey to the producer, Tony Exum, as opposed to just the saxophone player.
Wow. I like that. Yeah. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you,
really,
Bro,
really appreciate this, man.
Absolutely.
I found myself just listening to this, and I'm like, wait a minute, I gotta ask questions.
No, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, man.
And,
so
quite an honor.
Thank you, man. Remember, we all have a story. What's your story? Goodbye.